Get this recording going. All right. And why don't we just go ahead and introduce one another and or introduce yourself, and then we'll move forward. So I'll just kind of kick the call off here. My name is Davis James here. I'm down in the basement Anglers All in our studio. And today we have Matt and Dan from Colorado Trout Unlimited. These guys work behind the scenes and on the front lines of conservation here in Colorado and really do a great job of ensuring that there are rivers to fish and fish in those rivers. So why don't you guys go ahead and Dan, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Davis. And yeah, thank you to Anglers All for the opportunity to share the good word. My name's Dan Omasta. I'm a project coordinator with Colorado Trout Unlimited.
Right on. And
hi, guys. My name is Matt Moskal. I am the council chair of Colorado TU. I've been in that basement of yours a few times, and I just want to thank Anglers All for the opportunity to speak on a few pretty important subjects while folks are hunkered down. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, everyone's aware of what's going on at this point, and if you don't, then you must have been on one heck of a camping trip, I guess. You know,
good for you.
You know, it got me thinking. You know, normally we would have that opportunity, and because of timing and circumstances, normally we'd have that opportunity in the spring to catch up. And normally I would chat with Shannon and crew and our shop members would as well, and kind of get the skinny as to what's going on in 2020. And we kind of kicked this year off, and we hit a little bit of a standstill. But I know you guys have been working behind the scenes the whole time to keep things going, and there's a lot of programs you guys have initiated as a group, and I think the people need to know about those. So kind of without further ado, you know, maybe talk a little bit about getting involved, you know, how customers, friends, anglers can get involved with conservation kind of during a pandemic, and sort of what that looks like for you guys.
Sure. You know, most of your patrons are probably pretty familiar with Trout Unlimited. So I guess first and foremost, there's a big thank you that needs to go out to all of the anglers that have supported our organization in the past. And yeah, you know, you're right. With COVID happening, you know, a lot has changed, but we are sure not going to let it stop us. So we're still plugging right away. And you know, one of the ways that I think a lot of folks have helped in the past, and will likely continue to help us in the future, is on the legislative end, just being a real voice and kind of, you know, the eyes on the water for us as an organization. And the way to really, you know, start that, to give a real shameless plug, is just to join Colorado TU and stay up to date on on what events and what items we're pushing out to our members. You know, that's our job, is to be stewards of the watersheds, but also to provide a valuable service, you know, for our members. So, Dan, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's great. You know, TU, just celebrated over 50 years in Colorado last year. And so we've been part of some really big campaigns, and, you know, it's our membership and our business partners, like Anglers All, folks on the ground who commit time and money and, you know, are hiking fish in or planting willows, teaching kids how to fish. You know, it's this huge community in Colorado that's really driving conservation and the future of angling and healthy rivers in this state. So it's a really exciting time to be involved in water and to be a part of TU.
Right on. Yep. Wanted to apologize. We're in a squeaky old fly shop that's over 65 years old, and my office is right below one of the squeakiest sections of the floor. So can everybody hear me okay now?
You know, I didn't hear anything actually, Davis. So.
Oh, wow. All right. Yeah, we have I threw the earbud in because we've got a really old squeaky floor above me. So anyway,
Okay.
Well, that's awesome. You know, you guys, you know, I got a good outline from this call from Shannon here. She does a really good job of keeping us in touch with you guys, and we're always a resource, always there, and hoping to help out in any way that we can. What kind of campaigns are you guys initiated in right now, and kind of what does it look like in terms of conservation in Colorado, streams and different kind of community outreach stuff that you guys are doing? What does that look like right now, and which ones would you like to talk about? You guys kind of have a lot of campaigns going right now.
There's a lot going on. There seems to always be a lot going on, and that's a good thing, right? There's some stream management plans and some native trout stuff that I think Dan could probably touch on a whole lot more in a more articulate way than I. But I guess as kind of just a starting point for folks that are in this great lockdown, I kind of see it as an opportunity for folks to just educate themselves, and that plays right in with the TU ethos, right? We always talk about how we are a nonpartisan, science-based conservation organization, and if you're someone that's looking for real rational, pragmatic guidance about how to get involved, we believe that we can be a pretty good leader in that field. So as it relates to legislative stuff, when folks are at home, I think it's a pretty good time to scour our website and do some of your own due diligence on what's out there and what's worth supporting. That being said, we at CTU have a little bit of a challenge with COVID, of course, being the focus for this legislative session. Budget taking a priority as it should, but at the same time, we do have some things that we need to make known to folks, like the Land and Water Conservation Fund, the CORE Act, potential Good Samaritan legislation coming down the pike, and then the Clean Water for All Act, which is huge, which is essentially a response to the rollbacks of the Clean Water Act. So really, step one to getting involved, in my book, is just kind of taking those baby steps to self-educate. And again, we can help our members be we can help guide our members in the right direction as far as that goes.
Perfect.
I realize it's kind of broad, but
yeah, it's right now is a great time to absorb information. There's a lot of restrictions out there, and kind of depending on how people are handling those, it's just a good time to be informed and kind of learn about new things. You guys had recently, and I'm jumping a little bit to kind of a something we maybe thought about talking about later, but the CTU 50th anniversary film, I thought was just a moving piece that really did a good job of showing what these efforts look like firsthand.
Yeah, that's we're pretty proud of that. And I was thinking about that when Dan had mentioned that we just celebrated our 50th anniversary, and part of why we're here, and it just feels really right to me, is that we are protecting and preserving watersheds for our great grandkids. And if you think about it, 50 years ago, last year, there were folks that got together and said, hey, we need to stand up, and we need to keep an eye on and protect these cold water fisheries. And now here we are today, carrying on that legacy. And I don't know, it just feels really, really right to the core, and that film really just because of the different age groups that were highlighted, I think it did a really good job. So thank you for that. I'll pass that along to the rest of the folks.
Yeah, I've met Emma Brown a few times, who was in that film, through kind of one of your sub chapters, the Greenbacks. It was probably kind of what kind of initiated me on a personal note to Trout Unlimited a few years ago, and really enjoyed doing those tying nights with you guys. And for anyone who's watching, this is a little bit of kind of a podcast, video cast type of thing. We're recording this, and you guys are going to view it later. But Google the Colorado Trout Unlimited 50th anniversary film. it's just a really good piece that shows, what's going on here, and kind of the integration between some older generations, newer generations, and what we're kind of responsible for moving forward.
Thanks, Davis.
I guess, do you want to talk about some of the national campaigns, some of the different ones like that you guys are enrolled in, and maybe highlight a couple that people can do a little, additional research on? Do you kind of want to give sort of the crash course on some of the national level things?
Absolutely. National level stuff. Let's see. Well, I guess the two that come most to mind are what we call the LWCF, or the Land and Water Conservation Fund. It's kind of tied into the Great American Outdoors Act now. It's been introduced by the Senate, and it has 59 sponsors. We need that kind of magic number 60. But LWCF is an interesting one because it's the kind of thing that it's sneaky, because so few people are aware of it. But even if you are, an urban Denverite, you have the LWCF to thank for Wash Park. I mean, it's so ubiquitous. It's astonishing. And it's not any new legislation really, but what it does is it takes offshore drilling royalties, and essentially just uses that to protect public lands and wild places. And it's been in effect. So the current legislation is actually to get it fully funded. And in order to conserve our natural areas and wildlife habitat and open space, everything from urban to to real wild spots, it's going to require this funding. So that's one that folks should be really aware of.
I didn't realize it was kind of such a widespread, even to urban areas like Wash Park. For those, the Land and Water Conservation Fund is what he was talking about there. And, I don't know too many anglers who don't have their eyes set on fishing in more than one place than their local area. The water rights and impact us all, no matter where we go, where we live, and definitely good to that they're using those funds for a lot of different places, remote and urban.
Totally.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to. This is just another opportunity, to thank the members, and Dan mentioned that we're very boots on the ground organization. This is another perfect example. We've had so many of our members, write letters to the editor. They've done just general advocacy. They've talked to their representatives. We at CTU actually have a committee that we coined the Bull Moose Committee, that has been just a relentless advocate for this legislation. We conducted a fly-in to Washington D.C. with the chair of our Bull Moose Committee, Barb Sheedlow, as well as our executive director, David Nickham, and Corinne Doctor of Rep Your Water. And they made a point to go around and speak in person with representatives just on behalf of sportsmen, and letting them know that this is something that we need to make happen as soon as possible. So it just goes back to our members just being the absolute rock stars.
Right on. Well, we really are interested in kind of sharing. There's a lot of information out there on saving Bristol Bay and no pebble mine, but I think there's some of these different advocacy campaigns that a lot of people don't know about, and know
Yes.
kind of what are the core things impacting wetlands, water habitat, because riparian life in the river you like to fish is affected by the Alpine Creek upstream, is affected by the beaver dams and wetlands that exist in the system, and it's kind of all connected in that way. And I think there's plenty of people who certainly don't know about all the advocacy campaigns, aside from the ones that get a lot of press and coverage. So
That's right.
It's
very well said. It's amazing how it's all tied together, right?
Yeah, we've entered a new chapter constantly. I mean, we've got to constantly fight for these things, and signing a petition one time is one thing you can do, but there's you can sign it time and time again. And, I encourage anyone who's watching this to stay on top of what's going on. And, if you're spending 10, 15 minutes scrolling on social media, you've got, the 1 minute needed to, let your voice be heard. And you could certainly do more than that.
That's right. And then, the other thing is if it's kind of like, if not us, who? If sportsmen and outdoors people are not going to take the lead on standing up for these places, then who the hell is? And the funny thing about I realize I'm talking about CTU a lot, but I can't help it. The funny thing about us is when it comes to folks that are keeping an eye on these watersheds, we're everything from if you're the vegan tree hugger living in Boulder, you have a place with us. And if you're this red-blooded, hunter, cutthroat capitalist, you have a home with us. We have this ability through just being very science-based and pragmatic to really cut through this partisan nonsense that we have going on nationwide right now, and really have this ability to bring people together that just have a passion and love for wild places in the outdoors and clean, cold, fishable water in Colorado. So I don't know, just like we have more responsibility than we know. It's really up to us, and it requires some stepping up. And our members, I'm so proud to say, do that on a regular basis.
Right on. Yeah, the habitat's not going to preserve itself. I guess if we weren't around to stomp through it, it would probably be doing just fine. But we need to be sure that our impact is controlled and mitigated, and that we're doing the counterproductive measures. I noticed on the top of your website right now, there's a direct link to sign and be involved with the Great American Outdoors Act. Do you kind of have a little something to say about that?
Yeah, that essentially is the Land and Water Conservation Fund. They're tied together for reasons I don't think we need to really get into. But yeah, that essentially is providing the funding for the wild places that I mentioned earlier. And really, click on that hyperlink, because as soon as you sign up, you can receive all the communications from our team and really just keep you up to speed on what's going on. So I would encourage folks that if you're listening, coloradotu.org. Gosh, shameless plug after shameless plug, right, man?
It's all right. I'm gonna go ahead and show the website here.
Beautiful. Appreciate it.
For those who are looking to get into it, right up here at the top, there's a direct bar to the Great American Outdoors Act. You can support in less than a minute. You can get that thing, read up on it and see what it impacts, and fill it out. So, let's see kind of what a lot of people want to know is what are stream management plans? What are what are things that's kind of down and dirty in the riparian life? What's going on? And Dan, I think you're kind of the man for this. What's going on out there?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Davis. So, stream management plans are just another way that anglers and folks who care enough about a particular river or watershed can get involved to protect it. The idea of stream management plans were born out of the state water plan that was passed under Governor Hickenlooper in 2015. And these are all data-driven assessments of environmental health that communities across the state are using to assess their environmental and recreational assets, and looking for ways to protect and enhance those values. These plans range from looking at a 9-mile reach all the way up to an entire watershed or basin. And it's like I said earlier, it's an exciting time to be involved in water because right now there are 24 stream management plans happening across the state. If your viewers are out fishing public water, more than likely they're fishing an area that, if it isn't part of a stream management plan yet, it will be. And so it's really important that, the general angling community get involved. These plans are looking at everything from, public access, boatable days, riparian health, wetland function. But it's, more recently, it's been great. It's evolved from beyond just looking at environment and recreational needs, and is also bringing different stakeholders to the table. So agriculture is represented, municipal service providers, local governments, communities are coming together to identify what issues exist in their watershed. What does that watershed look like in 50 years with climate change or increased pressure? And what can we do about it today to preserve and enhance those areas that we all love to fish and recreate, or rely on that water for, irrigating our fields or from the tap. So right now, it's a great time to be involved with these things, and TU's been heavily involved. We're working on 16 different plans across the state, anywhere from kind of leading the charge to providing some technical guidance or sitting on a stakeholder advisory committee. So you don't have to be an expert in water to make your voice heard. Some of these stream management plans are using stakeholder surveys. We've got a couple on our website right now for the Blue and the Gunnison, where if you fish those areas, we're looking for your input. What areas do you see a lot of pressure? What areas have you noticed issues with, either the quality of fishing or something that is lacking? Maybe it's access or those kinds of things. And that all helps feed into this larger community conversation of what do our waterways look like right now, and how can we continue to protect and enhance them?
That's, to back it up just a little bit, I think there's a lot of people, and I myself have learned more and more every year about just how fragile the balance is between agricultural water supply, Denver, Pueblo, the whole Front Range water supply, with the demand, with the snowfall and snowmelt that we get. I mean, there's a really delicate balance working with Denver water, and then we have, the voice of TU really speaking for the anglers. And it sounds like there's numerous places where, as an angler, if you care about a certain piece of water, sounds like the Blue and the Gunnison, there's a few places you can give direct input on how they use the water. How do you access the water? There's limited days. Just to kind of throw an example, I'm a little curious about what's going on in the Blue. When I moved here, the Blue River was something that, it's kind of a key. It sticks out like a sore thumb, and everybody, it's a beautiful waterway that's just right under our nose. What's happening with that watershed?
Yeah, so the Blue is an exciting one. They have a stream management plan going since 2018, and they're doing kind of two things with it. The first is kind of a general basin assessment, looking at where where water quality issues might be coming from, in terms of abandoned mines in that area. Looking to our agricultural partners in the lower part of that valley to look at their irrigation infrastructure, see how, we can kind of come together to improve the system. So, if we can help them line ditches or improve a head gate, does that improve fish passage somewhere, or leave more water in the stream at certain times of the year? So there's a lot of that going on. Another big part of that plan right now is looking at what specifically is happening on the middle reach of the Blue River. I don't know if all of your viewers are aware, but in 2015, that 20-mile section of the Blue between Dillon Reservoir and Green Mountain was delisted from gold medal status. And we're seeing a lot of indicators that the fish population there just isn't what it used to be. Back to stakeholders giving their input, we're learning from a lot of anglers that have been fishing it for quite a while that at certain times of the year, there used to be prolific hatches, of drakes and caddis, and they're just not seeing that anymore. And so TU has stepped in, and we're working with partners in the blue, Colorado Parks and Wildlife and Forest Service and a lot of local outfitters to really dive into some of the details and to look at the macroinvertebrate health and do some pebble counts and look at how the stream is functioning as a system and if that's contributing to the declining problem. So what this plan is going to do is it's going to look at a lot of this data. It's going to take this different stakeholder input, and then we'll be working with partners to identify potential solutions. So it might be enhancing certain riparian areas or in-stream habitat. We could be looking at flows or temperature regimes that all affect fish or macroinvertebrates, and really just pulling people together and TU bringing in some of the funding to make that happen and really revive this fishery and bring it back to what it was.
Yeah, that was one of the first places I fished when I moved here. I was originally born in Colorado, but being raised elsewhere, it was an hour from my house, pristine, beautiful water. And I've had some really good fishing days. I've kind of since, moved a little further downstream with where I spend my time. A lot of the time I know people still do fish, that section between Dillon and Green Mountain. But, I've heard you constantly do hear oh man, if you had just been here 5 years ago, and well, it's cool to hear there's something that can be done about that. And look forward to see what happens with that stretch.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and there is still some good fishing in there, and talking with the local CPW biologists, there's still some big fish in there. So it's a matter of how can we improve it and how can we make it better.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. One of the first when I kind of first joined in on the greenbacks, and this is a little bit of kind of leading into what the next event here at Anglers All is we do the Mile High 25 every year. And first couple of years we had greenback cutthroat as an eligible species on the list for the Mile High 25, and I'm sure one day it'll make it back on that list. I think we figured that it was a little bit of a fragile species to send anglers to go chase after. They're pretty difficult to identify from a photograph or a video. So the Mile High 25, we're doing that event. It's a get with a buddy, go out on a scavenger hunt, and you use your smartphone to record the fish that you're catching. And it's really been a success for us. We're about to have our 5th year of this tournament. And people do catch greenbacks, and they're just listed under cutthroat right now. But what are the state fish of Colorado is the greenback cutthroat for those listening, and what all has been done over the last few years to kind of reestablish that species, and how much work has it been, and is this pandemic going to slow the ability to get people together to physically put those fish where they need to be? Because I know that's a huge component to the success of that.
Yeah. So the greenback, for those watching, is the state fish, and they thought it was extinct for a long time, and researchers at the University of Colorado and Colorado Parks and Wildlife were able to find a small species or a small population, just 700 fish in a couple miles of stream just outside of Colorado Springs. And ever since that time, partners have come together to get this fish back on the landscape. So TU is part of the Greenback Recovery Committee, and that is comprised of U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Forest Service, CPW, and a number of other partners. And And so they are targeting several big projects over this 10-year period that's been happening since 2012 to get these fish back into certain areas and really distribute those fish across the landscape. I think one of the big concerns with having just small populations of these native trout is that if you have a catastrophic wildfire, which isn't uncommon these days in Colorado, that could potentially wipe out an entire species. So we're moving very quickly to try and get these fish back on the landscape, but obviously these projects can take a while depending on the situation. So fortunately, the past few years we've been successful getting these greenbacks back into Herman Gulch and Dry Creek or Dry Gulch. And then we're working on projects in Rock Creek, just outside of Jefferson, Colorado. And then the upper Cache La Poudre in Rocky Mountain National Park is going to be a really big one. And so the last two I mentioned, Rock Creek and the Poudre Headwaters Project, are going to be creating these meta populations of greenbacks. So multiple connected drainages and lakes that these fish can really thrive and be able to reproduce naturally and be protected against some of those potential catastrophic events. Some of those projects that you talked about, hiking fish in, Herman and Dry Gulch, the past few years, we've had over 350 volunteers come out. And these are both TU members, but just anglers in general, people who don't fish, families, teachers, kids. It's been great to see the community, stand up and really come together to hike these fish up, 5 or 7 miles, some of these creeks.
Yeah.
So that's been really great. This last year, well, I guess for this year, COVID is going to certainly make an impact. We likely will not be seeing any of those large volunteer projects. But, it's more than likely next year we'll start hopefully having more opportunities again for people to volunteer. And it's not just the stocking element. There's a lot that goes into these projects, everything from citizen science and monitoring stream temperature and potential reclamation sites, all the way through carrying these fish on your back. And I have to say, taking a fish that was once extinct, a threatened species, and putting it on your back and hiking up, 4 miles and releasing it in this beautiful alpine valley, back into its natural environment where it's existed for thousands of years. It's a life-changing experience. So for your viewers, I really encourage you, it might not happen this year, but future years, you can find all sorts of opportunities like this, through Colorado TU. And we'd love to have you out there, whether you're a member or not. Definitely encourage you to be a member. It helps us do what we do. I'd also have to plug, some of our business partners too on these projects. They're huge supporters, and we couldn't do this kind of work without them also helping, not just with funding, but blasting the word out to memberships and helping us recruit the volunteers for these kinds of projects.
Yeah, it's
Dan,
go ahead.
real quick, I feel like folks, especially the anglers that are tuning in, they might want to know just about the process of how we identify a watershed and remove non-native species. Do you want to just give a little bit of background on how that works?
Sure. Yeah. So without going too much into the weeds on that,
yeah.
We work very closely with CPW and the Forest Service, and those guys are really the ones out there identifying suitable locations. So one of the big limiting factors for our native cutthroat in Colorado is invasive species like brook trout and brown trout, and these fish that will definitely outcompete than these native trout. So when we're looking for areas where we're trying to identify areas that can support healthy populations of fish. So the right kind of temperature, riparian habitat, bugs, all that good stuff. But then, we look for places that have a barrier down below that would prevent upstream migration of fish. If there's not one, then oftentimes we'll end up building one. That's one particular case is that Rock Creek project. We had to install 4 different barriers just to make sure that brook trout couldn't move back in. Another thing with these non-native fish is that they carry the parasite that carries whirling disease. So whirling disease significantly impacts these native cutthroat. And so when we've identified a site, we have to make sure that there's no fish in there that are going to compete and that it's whirling disease negative. So that can, ideally we find a place that already has a barrier and that isn't whirling disease positive. But if it is, then what we have to end up doing is either installing a barrier or removing those non-native fish out of there, make sure that whirling disease is out. And then we can start the stocking process. And I'd have to definitely put a plug into the CPW hatchery system. There's a few hatcheries in this state that really specialize in native trout rearing. And, these guys are a big part of the equation for getting these fish back on the landscape. It's not easy to grow these fish in a hatchery. They're used to living in the wild, and our CPW folks do a really good job in the hatchery system to get living healthy fish that we can use for these reclamation projects. So that's kind of a snapshot of how these processes work.
Right on. Go fishing licenses for being a part of what funds that.
That's right.
We've been getting some people here and there. The last, the fees increased a little bit this last year, but people don't realize that's a big boost, in economy for CPW and the entire, management system. So, I thought it was, interesting talking about the non-native species. We talk a lot about catch and release here at the shop, and, a lot of our gold medal water, of course you have to. And, our kind of sport fishing is thrives on, catch and release, to be able to leave that for the next person, leave it for the next day. But I think there are a lot of people who are unsure as to what maybe they should release and should not release. And, one that's been on my list on camping trips in the past has been brook trout, because, usually when you find one, you find potentially 50 to 100 of them. And I've seen firsthand how quickly, or, just how invasively they can take over a system of water.
Yeah, they're fun to catch. They're good to eat. It's I know a lot of people who only practice catch and release, and many people who do both. And brook trout are in the wrong places, they can really wreak some havoc.
Yeah, I think there's needs to be a good balance between catch and release and maybe a little bit of harvesting, but it kind of all comes down to what and what is right. So for the water, you're
just do it in the appropriate areas, right?
Yeah, for the water you're fishing, exactly. I think April Vokey's podcast, she does a really good job kind of talking about that topic of what's proper to catch and eat and what's proper to catch and release. And it obviously goes from water to watershed. But it's a cool thing to think that as anglers we can go out there and say, with the right numbers and we can do something to maybe help the proliferation of greenback cutthroat and et cetera. So cool stuff. There was I don't know a ton about the San Juan lineage here. Does anyone want to touch on that?
I was hoping you would ask that.
Right on.
Go ahead, Dan.
Another fish back from extinction. The San Juan fish, was rediscovered by CPW and the Forest Service 2018, 2019. Again, just a couple small populations in the upper San Juan drainage. And so, right now they're going through those very early reclamation steps to identify some potential sites that we can get these fish into very quickly to help spread them out and to start, boosting their populations to make sure that we don't lose them if there's, suddenly a fire or something like that up there in the Wolf Creek area.
So kind of just starting that process that's been ongoing with the greenback cutthroat. I did see that newsletter. There was a blip that popped up about a new sort of subspecies that had been rediscovered, or maybe not new, but a species that had been discovered. So, well, it's cool to hear that there's another sort of gem that might be chaseable here in the next few years.
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, to kind of put
things right.
What do you guys like to fish? I mean, you kind of bring this back to fishing and why we're here. Have you guys been, spending a little time on the water, or have plans to here in the near future? What are you guys, kind of interested in?
Matt?
Yeah, I'm headed down to backpack the Sangres this weekend, and I've kind of recently gotten into a mode. When I first started fishing, it was just like, how many can I stick in a day? Just like maximization. I couldn't get enough, right? And now it's moved much more into getting into wild places. That's where I really find my cathedral, for lack of a better term. So I really just try to get in it, and a native fish is always a plus. Yeah. So, and I try to also get out of Colorado too. We have a whole lot of water to explore here, but the rest of the Rockies are pretty great. So I don't mind invading Wyoming every now and then. But yeah, that's it for me.
Nice.
You, Dan?
Right on, Dan.
Matt, are you going after any of those Rio Grandes up there?
Maybe. We'll see what happens.
Nice. So I live up in Buena Vista, so the Arkansas is my home water. We've been getting out there a bunch, as much as we can. It seems like so is everyone else recently.
Yeah, it's been out there.
Yeah, so it's been fishing really well. It's one of my favorite spots. I lived for several years in the Gunnison Basin, and so it's always great to return home to fish the Tamichi and the Gunnison as much as I can. But I'll tell you what, this past November, I got my first taste of saltwater fishing down in Hopkins, Belize, and
there's no going back.
Permit
on a fly is a whole different world.
Hey, there's a TU for that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, saltwater fishing is exciting. I've kind of been got into bass fishing on the fly, then eventually saltwater fishing, then eventually trout fishing. So I kind of made a reverse.
Whoa, that's really rare.
Progression a little bit. I learned how to fly fish in Texas and moved back here to my birth state, and that's what kind of sparked my interest for trout. And pretty excited. I've got a flat tops trip planned for later this summer, so I'm going to be doing a little bit of the high alpine, backcountry fishing, and I'm pumped about it. Here at Anglers All, we're all about fishing it all. Everyone here kind of, I think each guy kind of and gal kind of has their own preferences to what they like to do, and kind of together we all have there's always a lot of fun experiences to listen to and hear from, and it always gives me good ideas of new places to go, for sure.
Nice.
Yeah, Davis, did you ever get into redfish on the fly in Texas?
I did. That's probably, if I had to name one species to catch for the rest of my life, that might be it. They're
so addicting.
They're so fun to sight fish. It's very simple. And you get to sneak around, and target fish like a hunter would, target a turkey or something. It's cool.
That's it. It is much more hunting than fishing when it's a tailing reds, and they'll eat. It's like, how refreshing.
Yeah.
Wow, you're going to eat any fly I put in your face. It's great.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think almost a bare hook with,
Right.
some hair off your beard or bangs would do it, Um, right on. You guys had mentioned something earlier, and it kind of sparked my thought process in the background here. As far as what anglers can do and get involved with, you mentioned these kind of citizen science kits. What does that look like? Is this a means for anglers on their own to maybe help you guys gather data? What does that look like?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways on the citizen science angle that folks can get involved. We partner with a group called River Watch, and they have a program that trains just normal everyday folks like you and I to be able to get out there in the field and collect water samples if you're looking for something specific in a watershed. Other opportunities, a lot of our chapters in the Front Range right now are going into these headwater streams and planting stream temperature loggers, and also kind of taking notes in terms of barriers and potential habitat, and it's a way that TU is helping our Forest Service and CPW partners potentially find some sites for these greenbacks to get back into, because we need to get them on the landscape pretty quickly. And so our members are out there that who are just fishing, doing a little bit of fishing, and then also pick up some data along the way. And it's really helpful for the Forest Service to kind of see these different temperature regimes and see when fish could be growing, and if there's enough warm days that we could potentially get a population in there. So those are some great ways to do it. And I think that another good way is just keeping in touch with what you're seeing on the water. TU is a resource, not just from us to our members, but from members to us. So if you're seeing erosion problems out there on certain streams, or something looks off, we really encourage you to reach out, and we can work with you to see what's happening. And who knows, you might create the beginning of a new stream management plan somewhere. So
Yeah. So go ahead, Matt.
Well, I was just going to say, to Dan's point, sorry, I think there's might be a little delay in my my headphones, but I was just going to say to Dan's point, with our 24 chapters around the state and 12,000 members, these are people that are really the eyes and ears of a watershed. So citizen science can, yes, be as specific as River Watch, but it's also, like Dan said, just being aware, being out there and talking about it if you see something that's amiss. And it's more than likely that you have a chapter in your area that can either do something about it pretty quickly or connect with us, and we can handle it. So it's that's really the value of Colorado TU is the fact that we have this dispersion of members across the state, and couldn't be luckier.
Gotcha. So, you guys, if you see something out there, don't hesitate to bring it into the fly shop. Take some notes, let us know, and we'll pass it along here to Dan and to Matt and to the folks at TU. We are the boots on the ground, and I guess if there's anything else we can do as the boots on the ground, don't hesitate to reach out to us if we need to get a message out to the greater community. I know there's a lot of work being done here in Denver on the South Platte to ensure, a livable trout population. And there's a lot of great, business partners and people responsible for that. And, but I think it does come down to the needs and response of the anglers. That's where we're hoping everyone will get involved, in one way or another.
That's right.
Great.
Well, I really appreciate the time. I don't have anything else unless you guys do. Do you have any kind of closing sentiments or statements?
All I would say is get out there and enjoy wild places and public lands, but do it responsibly. Stay on trails, pack in, pack out. We're seeing some pretty unprecedented usage of public lands on the Front Range right now for obvious reasons. Folks need that the healing of nature, but we need to do it responsibly. So stay on trails. Getting off a trail causes a lot of erosion and degrades the health of a watershed. So just enjoy yourselves, but do it responsibly. And then of course, as always, a huge thanks to Anglers All for being such a dedicated partner over the years. We couldn't do what we do without folks like you that support us, and we couldn't thank you enough.
Right on. Well, I'm here to represent, about 10 employees here. The owner, Chris Keeley, and his wife Sue have really the whole deal with Anglers All is the shop isn't just the owners, isn't just the people who work here. It's everybody. We wouldn't have a fly shop without the customers, and we wouldn't be able to do this type of work without support from everybody and you guys alike as well. So we really appreciate it.
Oh yeah.
One last thing that sorry, Dan, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when all this is over, to the viewers out there, definitely support your local fly shop, because
that's right.
Everyone's hurting right now, but it's a community, so let's keep it all strong.
Yeah. Hopefully before long we can get together and pack some fish in and be in a closer quarter situation.
Yep.
And if you are a first responder, I just want to make this known really quickly. Firstly, thank you for your service, but secondly, the CEO of Trout Unlimited is offering free memberships to first responders. Just Google first responder membership Trout Unlimited and you'll find it. That's our way of saying thanks to the folks that are helping combat this epidemic. So thank you.
Right on. Absolutely. That's a great plug and something that those first responders, if they aren't busy right now working, they should, hopefully they'll stumble into this later on and be able to take advantage of that. That's a really cool thing that's being done.
Thanks.
Right.
Well, appreciate the time, you guys, and for sticking around. What's the website for you guys if anyone's wanting to kind of investigate more?
ColoradoTU.org.
ColoradoTU.org. There's a lot of great information on there. I was, using it as some reference for this conversation. And again, check out the films you guys are up to, the films you guys are doing, and the stream side management, and we'll see you guys on the water hopefully soon.
Sounds great. See you in the shop.
Sounds great.
All right. You guys have a good one.
Appreciate the
Thank
time,
you.
Davis.
All right.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.